Let me introduce Robertas here. He's our branch chairman, and he will introduce the committee and some ground rules before we kick off so that we don't eat up into the conference time. Over to you, Robertas.
Yep. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Who is other side of the world is connecting to the webinar? Welcome everyone to IIMS webinar. Today the panelists will be one of them, the Captain Zarir Irani, which is regional director of Middle East and branch committee member of IIMS. Myself already was presented by Captain Irani. Captain Om Prakash, which is immediate past chairman, was of IIMS. Uday Murthy, past chairman and committee member. Peter Wallace, past chairman and committee member. Captain Alex, committee member. Aloysius Soares, committee member. Rohan Murthy, Bharati, Baganari, sorry, apologies for incorrect pronunciation, and Captain Nikhil Saxena. Today webinar will be discussing about the criminalization of the seafarers. During the webinar, please feel free to write the messages on chat box and your questions, whatever is concerns of yours, and the questions will be answered at the end of the webinar by the panelists. So far at the webinar we have registered, if I'm correct, Captain Irani was over 100, you mentioned, yes? Now we have at the moment 30 connected, but people coming in, which is very good. And we expecting more and more people. I think if we get 150, shooting for 150 to attend. There is, can I get the slide for the golden rules? Yeah. The gentlemen, during the webinar, switch off your webcams and microphone unless you're invited to ask a question or and discuss, okay? Don't self-promote yourself or your company. Potential customers will find you if you ask an intelligence question. Post live questions is in the chat box, which is already told that don't hesitate. Put your questions in the chat box, and the questions will be answered in a way they arrived at the end of the panelist conversation and discussion. Counter questions, arguments may not be encouraged. So please follow those rules for the webinar, and so to avoid any miscommunication and misunderstanding. So in order sake. So therefore, I'd like to pass the word for the Captain Irani, Zarir, and he will be leading the webinar and communication and conversation with the panelists.
Thank you very much, Robertas. Robertas is our current chairman of the branch and has put up with a very testing tenure during COVID, and we admire his courage. The committee backs him up and will stand by him. Thank you very much, Robertas, our chairman for the UAE branch. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zarir Irani, and thank you for standing up for the seafarers. I will not take any more time than needed to get on with it. I am literally going to be the fiddler in the middle with Advocate Ashwin Shanker and Captain LK Panda joining us. The etiquettes are up there. We hope you follow them, but we are very, very flexible. Please feel as comfortable as you all can. We are all grown-ups, and we hope that we will get on with it. Let me introduce and welcome Captain Panda, whose profile is up there, and I refuse to go up front to speak before him. I have always followed what he has asked me, and I will maintain the decorum. Captain Panda, your profile is up here. Without much ado, I will leave that profile up while you make your opening statements on this webinar. Please, over to you, Captain Panda. You're muted, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Zarir. And good afternoon to everyone, and good morning or good evening to anyone on the other side or different side, different part of the world. I thank the IIMS to give me this opportunity to speak on a subject which is so very dear to all of us. Having served the maritime community well over 25 years, this subject of criminalization is very close to every seafarer, and it's having an effect on the seafarers or on the prospective seafarers. Though everybody accepts that shipping is the most vital cog in the wheel for development of the economics, or plays a very important part so far as maritime trade is concerned. Yet, the man behind the wheel is sometimes forgotten. What other opportunity can we think of other than praising the seafarers who, in the trying and testing times when the whole world shut down at different times, at different parts, but the seafarer went on taking a ship from north to south and east to west. There has been an effort to appreciate them, but regrettably, the criminalization of seafarers is increasing by the day. A person who has been trained on safety aspects, be it the STCW Convention, be it the Marpol Convention, be it the SOLAS Convention. He has been trained to take the ship from point A to point B. All these conventions are civil conventions, but it is painful to see that those countries who helped in developing these standards for the safety of the seafarer and the marine environment just don't bat an eyelid when it comes to crucifixion because of any incident or accident in or around their coast. It is a pathetic sight that the seafarer who has been sailing the ship, doing his duty to the best of his ability, at small mistake leading to some incident causing pollution, is handcuffed and put behind bars without giving him an opportunity to address his grievances. There are many instances I would not like to cite because I'll run short of time. I have faced the same. What else can you say? That they have been simple victim because of the apathy or because of the system. May I say one small thing here, that it is not the fault of one body. It is starting from the company to the flag state, to the home state, to the coastal state, to the port state, and even to the unions to come up and address the issue in the right direction. Everyone talks about the big 30 principles of UDHR, especially the Article 9, which talks about a fair treatment should be given and nobody should be arrested. And the figures indicate that most of the seafarers have been criminalized and are languishing at the developed countries. One incident reminds me where 87 Indians were arrested, virtually arrested on their ship for no fault of theirs, off Indonesian waters. Very recent incident which has happened, I hope good sense prevails. The seafarers have become victim of the legal system or extended legal systems ashore. The civil laws of related to marine fraternity is being twisted and interpreted into the criminal aspects so as to appease, so as to satisfy the local bodies. Is that the way of giving justice to the community which has served the world for so long? Many examples will testify and justify my statement. There have been instances where the seafarers have not been able to communicate and have not been able to understand the language in which they have been prosecuted. However, there is no time for self-pity. There's no time for self-pity. Every seafarer, every organization has to endeavor to educate, to change, to have a paradigm shift in thinking. The time has come when the organizations like the IMO, like the states, will have to extend the importance of this issue to shore. Mere bringing in ISM Code or mere bringing legislations is not going to suffice. Therefore, it's a good forum. I appreciate such forum to take up this issue so that the seafarers can deliberate or the maritime community can deliberate and find out ways and means how to address this system. I stop here with my generic remarks instead of going into the incidents and accidents, which is known to all, and it will not be correct to discuss those issues in general because some are under sub judice, some have been challenged, but the main issue remains that the seafarer needs justice and it must be addressed adequately. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Captain Panda. We are really privileged to have your opening words in this webinar with adequate disclaimers and being as correct as possible. The idea of this webinar or this discussion is not to pin blame on anybody, but to talk about the circumstances around it. Thank you very much. We will now go to our next panelist. He's a learned advocate and has got a very out-of-the-box approach towards his views on various aspects. He is going to sound very, very lawyer-like. He has been told by us to do so. But before I hand over to him, I have been told by somebody very candidly and prompted to actually thank him for giving his legal input towards some formations of this. And it's not you, Ashwin. So I acknowledge that person for the inputs given. Quite cheeky of him, but I know he'd be very upset if he doesn't hear this from me. But over to you, Ashwin. That's your profile there. And what are your opening comments before we take questions from the panel, from the floor?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I thought I'd try and present this to you all from the other side. So the unpopular opinion is what I'll try and open up your mind to think, as to try and justify as to why countries react in the way they do. What are the flaws in our arguments as to why the master should not be pointed at when it comes to criminalization? So I'll try and give you a balanced perspective and let you all make a more educated choice. Of course, my heart will always be for the seafarer. This is what an industry I've supported right through. So the views are not actually my own views, but it's just thought to provoke your minds on this. So essentially what I will be doing is unpopular opinion. In the course of the discussion, I'm not going to give any examples of the famous landmark cases, any pictures of ships that have crashed. You would have seen all of this. I'm not going to give you stories of masters who've languished wrongly in jail. It doesn't serve the purpose. I'm not going to name 5, 10, 20 conventions. It just gets academic and boring. You can find that anywhere on the computer if that interests you. What we'll focus on is exactly why are seafarers becoming target of this and what is being done wrong by the port state under which this problem has arisen. So I had a few thoughts on this. So what are the most common problems why this happens? One is pollution, two is a collision, and three is probably presence of drugs, prohibited items on board the ship, either stuck to the hull or hidden inside the cargo or in part of the accommodation. Now, what we're effectively trying to do is tell a home country that don't exercise your own jurisdiction or your own criminal system for an offense being done over there. And that is something very fundamental. And in the course of this example, let's just take Egypt as an example, because that's the live burning topic today. What we're effectively telling Egypt is don't punish people who come and committed or may have come and committed an offense in your country. Now, how would you like it if that was told for an offense that was committed in India? One. Number two, do we really have, at least in India, do we really have the ability to say so straight? Did we treat the Italian mariners in a fair way that we're asking to be treated? Did we treat the Indonesian pirates in the fair way? And I don't think so. Are they giving us a differential treatment? No. Let's say our master, which is a foreign master, let's take India as an example, has been involved in a Suez Canal tragedy over there. Is he going to be available to defend a trial and face a punishment? Should he be punished so some years later on? And because he's a foreigner and likely to flee and not from a country with where there is an extradition treaty, there often is the need for parties to be deprived bail to continue to be in that country. We would do exactly the same if a foreigner committed an offense or was alleged to have committed an offense in India. So what makes a seafarer special in this regard? That was one question I just want you all to think about and ponder. Of course, I know the passions and everybody over here is completely pro seafarer. I am also like that, but I just want you to consider what the other side of the coin is. One of the how the DG shipping has reacted. What is the Director General shipping done to help out crew members who've either been stranded? Have they interacted? Have they taken an initiative to appoint lawyers to make a bail application in that foreign country, to interact with the consulate office? To what extent has participation come from our own government to support our own seafarers before we're asking for others to treat us with some sort of immunity? So that's my second or third point. I have a few more points. And the words that we use like criminalization, soft target, these are all actually a play on words. It suggests that the person is innocent, but he's being wrongly accused. But we really don't know enough to come to that conclusion. I mean, the facts that are told to us is very superficial. There's a lot more, and sometimes it's the fault of the crew, sometimes it's not their fault. But it's too early for us to be able to prejudge, to use these kind of words that suggest that somebody is being a victim of a wrong prosecution or a wrong detention. And I know some of you, even in the audience, may have been subject to this and may have been innocently, and therefore will passionately feel that what Ashwin is saying is completely wrong. He's never been there, so he has no business to say what he's saying. But just consider this from the country's perspective, where an offense has happened, where there's been pollution, where there's been injury to their local, to their fishermen, and consider whether their reaction is something odd or wrong in that. What are we taking away a country's right to administer justice? Would you like that if a foreigner came and committed an offense in India and then says, no, as a matter of right, I'm entitled to go back? And I don't think the answer to that would be any different. And a lot of this comes from a belief that all countries' criminal justice system works in the same way. Like we think India works in one way, the UK works in one way, and we expect everybody to work in that way. But that may be a myopic view of things, because different countries follow different systems and different logics in the way it's going to be treated if you commit an offense. And if you do go to that country and you are alleged to commit an offense over there, you must suffer the same treatment that any other local would be it good, be it bad. But the treatment should largely be the same. So this is my broad opening of what we'll deal with, and I just want you all to think through this, and then we'll get into further details later on when we deal with any question and answers as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. Ashwin, you are brave, I must tell you. There has to be another side of the coin, and I'm glad you're looking at that side of the coin. Unfortunately, that coin does not have the face of the Lord or the three lions, or whichever say one's head and one's the tail. I don't need to justify what comes from the tail end, but you have stood up to what we want to hear, to make this a balanced webinar. We want to see both sides, and we want the side coming from somebody who is clearly a legal mind and not somebody who's got salt in their system, like myself and Captain Panda. But I'm sorry to say, I am going to stand by my fraternity, and I'm going to be lobbying a little towards it. So you're by yourself, it's 2 against 1, mate, but I'm sure you've got the capability and the backbone to stand up. But my opening comments would only be this: why this cause? Why now? Why not earlier? Why take a stand now? Why not leave it to it, like most other forums have not wanted to talk? Some said don't post this on our group, etc. Some said it's subjudiced, etc. But hey, what's the point in talking about this after the hammer is down and the judgment's passed? So my view is, talk about it when something can be done or somebody can take notice of it, and the course is there to be steered. After the voyage is ended, there's no point in steering the wheel. The ship's not going anywhere. Right now, she is underway, and this is the time to do something about it. Talk about it. So those who are taking it in a direction of keeping them seafarers on board or not, wherever it is happening in the world, not just one landmark case, but I'm sure there are 2 or 3 or 4 vessels at the moment who may have had seafarers in anxiety and anxiousness. And I am talking here on behalf of everyone. Being the first respondent to most claims, I must say that we have seen enough masters, enough seafarers in despair, in tears, and in need of assistance. Although we do come sometimes from an owner's perspective, sometimes from the charter's perspective, but we do all in all sympathize for them. And this is yet another such case where we would like to air ourselves. We have a bone at the back, and we would like to stand up to it. And I compliment Captain Panda to support us, and Ashwin to talk about it. Without much ado, I want to get on. I don't want to take too much time. This is all I have to say. The way we will go about is, those who are online and have submitted their pre-assigned questions will be invited in to speak. The pre-registration form had that provision. There is a small disclaimer, and we want you to take notice of that. We are not going to use, as far as possible, names of ships, names of management companies, ownership companies, and the intention is to discuss this as openly and to invite thought ideas, thought leaders, and benefit whoever is there on the other end of such incidents. There is no other motive at all for this 1 hour that we're going to put together answering questions. So the first question will appear on the panel is by Saurabh, and it is directed to me, unfortunately, the first one. So Saurabh, if you're online and want to ask this question yourself, and I'm not going to read the questions, it is there, but I'm going to answer this very, very simply put. How does the master fend off third-party questions without prejudice to the situation if he finds himself in? I will tell you this in terms of a question. Have you heard of this American? If you were an American citizen, Saurabh, you would know. Is Saurabh on board? Saurabh, is he wanting to ask? All right. Anyway, I'll answer this. Have you heard of the Fifth Amendment rights? And the master has similar rights. He can shut up and not answer questions to those whom he doesn't want to. And trust me, there are people who will threaten him to take him down to the station. They will say that we will write and give you a statement, and you will only write that. There will be lawyers appointed on behalf of interested parties representing the interest of the owners and such. But the master does have a right to keep quiet. Now, if the master keeps quiet and doesn't give any statements, doesn't say anything, he's not doing his job according to some ship management companies. And that's why they fly in their ship managers. I want to ask this, I want to bounce this question off to Ashwin to ask him if there is at all a case for the master to have his own attorney appointed in case he so demands and says that, yes, thank you very much, PNI Club and Mr. Owner, you send me somebody who looks after your interests and has actually signed a contract saying representing owners and owners' interests. Most lawyers these days at PNI Club are taking instructions from the owners. But is there a case in future? Are we going to see one day where the master actually has his own legal attorney standing by for his own personal protection, or in his interest of representing him? What is your call on this?
Certainly. I was recently involved as a lawyer for assisting the master for the ship that was stuck at, I think it was in Mauritius about 5 months ago. And we had different set of lawyers for the master and separate for PNI, separate for owner, because while we did trust each other, it was not 100% degree of trust. So yes.
So good. So we see a day where master will say, where is my lawyer? Speak to my lawyer. And if we are talking about flying taxis, and no petrols in cars and oxygen cells and cells, why can't the master say, I will not speak without having my lawyer by my side? So Saurabh, in brief, that's your answer. We're going to stick to 2-minute protocols to each answer. So that's your answer, Saurabh. If you're happy, give us a thumbs up. If not, you can ask a follow-up question and we will get back to you on email. We discussed this on the dry run this morning. Everybody who have asked questions will get an answer sheet from the panelists and their inputs, and this will be circulated. So Judy, next question, please.
Different answers from each panelist.
What's that? Sorry.
Different answers from each panelist. So
yes, different answers from each panelist. And that will be giving you all the perspectives. Second question is from Kalyan. If Kalyan is on board on the thing, we have scratched out the second part of his question because we thought it was not relevant. Sorry, Kalyan, but we got to stick to absolute protocol here. But Captain Panda, do you want to take that, sir? About
okay.
Pilots?
Okay. It's though that last line has been scratched out, but it is nothing uncommon. Sometimes from the packet of few cigarettes, it goes to something else. As long as it goes as a compliment for the good effort or the good support given by the pilot, it should be welcome. Because why I'm saying that, if you the collision regulation of 1972 in rule 2, that is lookout, clearly mandates that the ship must make use of all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances for maintaining a lookout. Here, if the ship is passing through confined waters or restricted waters, and if there is support given by the pilots, then the same should be taken. And if the pilot's advice or pilot has been sought by the master, then he is working on behalf of the master. I'm not talking about compulsory pilotage. I'm talking about optional pilotage. So when you have an optional pilotage, it is the master's responsibility directly, because he had the option to take the pilot, and therefore he may take his instruction and may not take his instruction. But now the question comes about compulsory pilotage, where it has been made mandatory. This subject needs broader discussion, as on today, the ship is always remaining under master's command and under pilot's advice. So definitely it is not a crime to depend on the pilot or the port authorities. May I extend a little further to this, as you all may agree that whether the vessel is under compulsory pilotage, mandatory pilotage, or under optional pilotage, the command of the vessel remains with the master. And the famous inscription made in the logbook is courses to master's order and pilot's advice. This continues and has been accepted by the legal processes. And I think there is a need to change this or have a paradigm shift in thinking when the vessel is under the compulsory pilot or the mandatory pilot and is sailing or maneuvering in the inland waters, restricted waters, canals, and such places. This need to be changed, or this need to be thought upon. That's all I can say in this thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Panda, for the lovely answer and sticking to time. Next question is from Kumar. Kumar, do you want to come up and actually explain your long question? You're talking about apportionment of blame, and you're talking about class flag and the authorities where the casualty has occurred wanting an expert view on resulting on legal implication cost sharing by the others. By class flag, I don't know. Ashwin, yours. But before that, let me give a chance to Kumar. Kumar, do you want a clarification on this if you want to come on? I know you're online.
Hello, gents. Thank you for a very, educative input from all of you. My question is quite simple, but I wrote nothing more to add. And if Ashwin can say something on that, will be much appreciated.
Thank you, Kumar. Ashwin, over to you, sir.
So after you hear the answer to this, you will all want to go and get yourselves LLB degrees. There's a gold mine of potential litigation ahead, or gold mines of potential litigation. Okay. So what kind of litigations can be there arising out of this? So and I may have missed out some, so you all may please add on them. So the first is, of course, off-hire claims. Then cargo delay in delivery claims, cargo deterioration damage claims, that is shipper or receiver versus evergreen, general average claims, and so this can be in the range of up to 50% also of the cargo value will be asked to put up as security in favor of evergreen. Suez Canal authorities versus evergreen reputation loss. Salvage claims, that is Smith and Boskalis versus Evergreen, Smith and Boskalis versus every cargo interest whose container is on board the vessel, so 20,000 odd containers. More interesting and more complicated ones are the remaining vessels, so the 100 to 200 vessels which were in the queue, whether they are entitled to declare off-hire for that point of time. What about those vessels that took the longer route, compensation for the longer route to be filed by the vessels against Evergreen, even though there's no contract between them, whether Evergreen would owe anything to the subsequent vessels for blocking their intended route. Again, commercial, financial claims. Claims from the crew for the assistance that they may have done in the salvage. So salvage claims by crew members also, if it goes beyond the scope of their regular duty. Then the salvers themselves would have had numerous tugs and subcontractors assisting them, so disputes arising under that. What if it is found that the error was not of the master, not of the pilot, but was a vessel-related fault? So either the builder of the vessel would be at fault, or the dry dock who did it last would be at fault, or the classification society may be at fault who approved it. Supposing, for example, there was a navigational steering or rudder error in the vessel that caused this. Another potential set of complex litigation. Damage physically caused to the canal by Evergreen itself. There wasn't, I think, any, because it was then checked and the canal was reopened soon thereafter, but that was one potential head of litigation. Then let's assume all this happens, then the vessel versus the pilots. So the pilots have made a recommendation. If that recommendation turned out to be wrong, leading to the vessel running aground. So there's another set of litigation of vessel versus pilot. Other vessels versus pilot, that means other unrelated vessels who got blocked, but may choose to blame the pilot if the error is found, and if the Suez Canal authorities can then be liable for that, because we don't know whether the canal is at fault as yet or whether the vessel is at fault, but I'll make a comment on this shortly. And then the Suez Canal authorities itself versus the master for a commercial claim, versus the class authority for a commercial claim, and versus the ship owner for a commercial claim. Now, this is one set of litigation. Separately, you have criminal litigation that could go on, that is damage that is caused to environment, if any, negligence, blockage of waterways. So there's that another whole limb of litigation. Now, a common question that a lot of people will be thinking about is, while going through a canal, who is liable? Is it the master or is it the pilot? Now, according to the Suez, there are multiple answers to this, but first I'll give you the devil's advocate answer against the answer that you want to hear. Is that under the Suez Canal Authority rules, it says very clearly that the master is responsible for the time that it is passing over here. The pilot is only giving recommendation. The pilot's duties start and end the moment it enters into the Suez Canal. So there is no liability upon the pilot, at least according to the Suez Canal rules, and that has been something which has been signed and agreed upon. That is one. Number two is by way of practice, and all of you seafarers would have experiences. When you're passing through the Suez Canal, you always felt that this is a very expensive charge, and all you're getting is a bunch of Suez Canal crew coming on board the vessel, sitting, helping you through the pilot by just sitting in their own cabin, maybe taking a pack of cigarettes, but not actually contributing in this. So you always felt that this was being done without the assistance of the pilot. Now, when today something has gone wrong, is it correct for to say that no, that's a pilot error, when historically the common practice is that the pilot or the crew on board that came from the authorities did little or nothing to assist in the vessel, and that had become normal way of functioning. So, and at that time there was no complaint at all from any of the vessels. So these are the one set of potential litigation and arguments on this. Now, on the other hand, okay, let's assume that his obligation was not binding but was only recommendatory. But what if that recommendation, and this is the argument on the other side, but what if that recommendation itself was wrong? What if after following that recommendation exactly is what led specifically to the Evergreen vessel getting stuck in the canal? Should the pilot not be responsible for that? Should the authorities not be responsible for that? But there is a lot more fact finding that is required before we can say either way. All we just need to know what are the possible combinations in this thing, and then start working towards identifying those sets of evidence to lead us to the answer that we need to know. Yeah, thank you on this.
Thank you very much for that elaborate answer. I am sure that would satisfy Kumar. Kumar, are you happy with the answer? You can only say yes or no. There are no counter questions, mate.
Yes, at the moment, yes. Okay.
Thank you very much. Sorry to put you in the spot there, Kumar, but you can put in the chat box if you want further explanation. I'm sure Ashwin will be happy to write back. But moving on, next question is from Mohit Kapoor, and he's online. Mohit, do you want to shout out your question? You're talking about a global policy, a very good point there raised, and I think Captain Panda is most suitable to answer that. But if you want to briefly come in, Mohit, and elaborate upon your question, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. Good afternoon. This is Mohit Kapoor here. Hi Panda sir, how are you?
Fine.
Hi, Ashwin. Nice to see you both after a very long time. Well, I think all the normal questions are there relating to the operations and other areas where seafarers and the maritime industry are affected. But we are not really talking in terms of a global policy level where this criminalization of masters, as we have seen from a period of time where you being the nautical advisor at that time and on your journey across, we have seen a lot of things happening, but nobody is talking about a policy. So my question is directed towards you, sir, that we have not seen any development in approach from the global maritime administrations to formulate a global policy to give seafarer a safe passage from a situation where he is held guilty in spite of being innocent. Can the eminent panelist answer? And if we see now recently the document that has been signed by many of the ship managers of calling maritime as essential workers, and those documents, the Neptune document is going on for a period of time, why not certain such initiatives where we masters are the backbone and the strength for the shipping industry to move ahead? And if we are held somewhere and where we are innocent, so that does not give a good picture for the maritime industry, where we require more amount of number of seafarers and the other people to join shipping. Sir, over to you, and Ashwin, you can also answer this if you feel that you can. Sir, please, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohit.
Yeah. Great, Mohit. Thanks for elaborating the issue through your question. Well, this subject, India being the third largest supplier of seafarers to the world, we have faced many such issues. Yes, during my period serving as nautical advisor, we faced the acute problem of South Korea. Though the seafarers have been termed very recently as essential workers for the purpose of seeing facilitation of movement of cargo, movement of traffic, or movement of trade during this pandemic period. However, this issue was discussed way back from 90s till the IMO came out with the document for facilitation of seafarers through fair treatment of seafarers during the casualty period or during any incident or accident. This again, as you may be knowing, that the circulars that are being issued by IMO are generally advisory in nature, unless otherwise they are being brought in this convention and rules of the country as such. Efforts have been made by the PNI clubs, efforts have been made by many voluntary organizations and NGOs in trying to bring out reports of the cases where the seafarers have been criminalized. When I'm saying criminalized, means they are being treated as criminals. Though, to be frankly speaking, Ashwin may beg to differ on this. Criminal here is when you have an intention to create or intention to do crime, not extrapolating the local laws and brand the defaulter as a criminal. Well, the damage is done, but that doesn't mean that the person concerned was a criminal. Anyway, there is a move by the Directorate General of Shipping in addressing this issue in the FAL committee, and with different management, with the trend in shipping where the owner is different, the flag is different, and well over 2/3 of the ships are being registered with open registries, and some registries are not, I say, not discharging their duties as they ought to. This problem has become more acute. Therefore, right in the beginning, I said it has to be the collective effort of the flag state, the home state, the coastal state, and the port state, the unions. So far as training is concerned, I understand the Director General of Shipping will be creating a new course to make the seafarers aware of this problem and what to do and what not to do. Best is to educate yourself and prepare for such eventualities till all the nations agree and formalize a better system or better guidance note to adopt it universally. That's all I can say. It will take time, but there is a need for this. Thank you
very much, sir. Ashwin, do you want to add a little bit about global policy? Do you see it coming very soon?
There has been some discussion to say that seafarers should not be made subject to the local country's criminal regulation, but there should be an international body like United Nations or IMO run, which will actually be the one which is going to be doing the trial. So therefore, a standard, uniform, and hopefully more reliable method of criminal justice system for seafarers, which was proposed and discussed. But the doubts that it has is, A, why only for seafarers? Why not for airline staff? Why not for general tourists? That was one. Number two is, are countries actually going to voluntarily give up their criminal powers that they have to punish people who are suffering from their own country? So, but otherwise, yes, I agree that it's of course not fair, but this is just the what developments have already been considered to make a uniform, international, more reliable system for criminal justice trial systems for seafarers.
Yeah, I had an interesting input. Thank you very much for that input, Ashwin. I had a very interesting discussion, and one of the things that came out this morning was something that has come as a global policy as an example of how to deal with COVID. And I was told very reliably that the starting point will be by the local ports and jurisdiction, i.e. the signing off of crew members, etc. To be more encouraged by the ports and the throughways, like the major choke points of Gibraltar's and the Singapores and Dubai's and Fujairah's. If they start accepting some kind of a decorum, everything else will fall in place, like the signing off of seafarers during this pandemic was facilitated by some of the major ports, and then everybody stood up and took cognizance of it as a necessity. So that is what was point of discussion this morning. I thought I'd add. So that would be the starting point of a global policy, if at all. So that's that. Next question is from Jagannath. He's online, but he prefers to stay mute. And the answer is very simple. We couldn't stop seafarers from coming on during the Gulf War, during the 4 blasts that happened on tankers off the east coast of UAE. They continued sailing. During the war, they got war compensation. And I think they will continue to sail because, unfortunately, money is an important consideration for most people. And I must say that there will be no way a seafarer, once he's on board, he can refuse to go into certain locations, certain areas. That's my short and simple answer. Jagu, if you had the answer, give us a thumbs up. If you want to follow up, please put it in the chat. We will discuss it later on. Moving on to the next question is from Vikram Mathur from UML. He asks Captain Panda a very interesting question. I think Captain Panda in his white paper contribution to me has mentioned about the ISM Code and the joint responsibility between ship and shore. And this question points towards that. Captain Panda, I think you have a thought about this. And can you please add a little bit of your views on for Vikram Mathur, please? If Vikram is here, if you want to just talk about it, if he's online.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Can I hear a little more from him? What is actually his question, so that we can discuss a little more on that? Well, now, as far as the ISM Code is concerned, that was the first time the IMO took the responsibility from the ship staff and also passed it on to the shore staff. In that context, I have been always thinking that when any casualty or any incident is taking place near the coast, why not extend the same to the coastal state as well. Whether adequate support has been given, whether the coastal state or the port state has discharged its responsibility as it should have. Therefore, there is a need to amend the chapter of the ISM, not restricting only to the ship managers. We have seen how difficult it was in the case of Prestige, how difficult it was in the case of Erica, how difficult it has been even in the case of Ever Spirit, with respect to bringing the shore authorities to discharge their responsibilities and to account for their responsibilities. It has never been. In India, not only in India, in many countries, the ports work or the ports follow the principle of zero liabilities through their own system. Like the Suez Canal authorities have their own regulations. Even in India, you have the Indian Port Authorities, even the major port acts. Is that justified? And at the same time, have mandatory pilot, have your own person assisting the vessel. Therefore, there has to be a system where the responsibility has to be adequately addressed by the ship and the shore as well. ISM is not the solution for addressing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Panda, for that. I would like to add over here a small a joint question which Jeffrey has asked in the chat room, and that's about the speed of transit in the Suez Canal. And apparently it was much more than the design speed and the regulatory speed, and the entire convoy was going at that. And this is something Jeffrey has asked, and it's something to do with joint responsibility. And if Jeffrey is there, if we unmute him, do you want to add your question here, Jeffrey, to put it in your own words, please, so that we can have either Ashwin or Captain Panda answer that? You're muted, mate.
Yeah. I had on. Yeah. Hi, and you can see I'm wearing a very special tie today.
Thank you, sir.
So I heard from a student of mine who's a second engineer on another vessel that had left the Suez just 2 days before this incident, that his batchmate, who's actually second engineer on the Ever Given, so told him that they went in his opinion, far too fast. And I don't know, I've not been at sea, but I reckon that 13 knots for such a big baby is really quite fast. And I just wanted some more expert opinion as to whether that is correct, whether 7 to 8 knots is perhaps more of a sensible speed to go in for such a big, long vessel with such a wide beam. It may be okay to go through if you're a much smaller ship, but even then, there were 2 pilots, SCA pilots on board. What were they doing? I understand, of course, from the comments that have been made just now, that the master is ultimately in charge. Of course, I know that theoretically anyway, but it just seems that maybe Captain Panda can give a little guidance. It just strikes me that, I mean, this case is going to rumble on for months, if not years, and arbitrators like me, we're going to be kept really busy with this. The knock-on effect, not just for this one, but of course for the 300 other ships, and the delay and the multimodal transport, not just with containers, all the other vessels carrying all different cargoes. This is going to rumble on and on and on. And I think that the fault may well lay at the SCA. They're putting up a smokescreen of $1 billion claim for 6 days closure, which of course everybody knows is complete tosh. But nevertheless, I'm curious.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Over to you, Ashwin. Captain Panda, who wants to take this?
Ashwin, you would like to address?
I don't have, I mean, assuming that the speed was fast, then we need to also understand whether the high speed in any way contributed to the vessel grounding. It could be 2 unrelated things. Number 2, whether the high speed was necessary. Sometimes speed is good, sometimes speed is aided with favorable currents or with wind or it may be necessary because there was a strong wind blowing from Africa towards Asia. So I think it's more than just high speed, which I think the nautical people like Zarir or Captain Panda can throw more educated light on than myself.
Before you do that, if I could just add one more question. I also saw a report with digital images from satellites that the vessel had been scooting around making figures of 8 and so forth outside, south of El Suez, before she went in, and maybe she picked up speed in order to catch up lost time.
No, Jeffrey, that doesn't happen. It's a convoy speed, and everyone in that convoy maintains the same speed. And just to mention facts here, 16 kilometers per hour is what is mentioned in the rules of the Suez Canal, and she was doing 24 kilometers per hour. Ashwin mentioned correctly, it has to be proximate to the incident, then it is relevant. But it just goes to say that not just this vessel, but the entire convoy was proceeding at probably a higher speed. Yeah. And not just this, if you look at before and after this incident, they were all ahead of that speed limit. And that question is quite relevant as to apportionment of blame, whether it was proximate to the incident or not. It just is something to look into in terms of breach of rules by one of their own, because port control is watching them all the time. There is reporting at different levels. 2 pilots on board have a duty of advice. Did they advise the master to slow down and maintain the rule of law or not is to be all looked into. But Captain Panda, do you have anything to add to this interesting comment?
I think we should not jump into any conclusion as such, because I understand there is an investigation going on, and they will definitely be having a SOP, the standard operating procedure for that. In my opinion, that the speed is not the only factor for such vessels having such windage. The weather impact is much more than anything. Then on top of it, I understand that passage there was a bend, so the bank cushion would have also taken place, because the vessel, I understand, moved from one side to other side before finally grounding. So there are many issues that will be involved in it. Speed will not be the only limiting one, or not the determining one. Let's wait for the investigation reports. But speed, I understand from the reports of the newspaper, was a bit more. That's all I can say at this stage.
Gentlemen, can I speak for a moment?
Vikram, yeah, Vikram, you're online. He's asked this question. Please, can you tell us what was the motive behind this? And if you're happy with it, let us know the answer that you're happy, or if you want to elaborate, we'll take it forward.
Yeah, I'll just go on the second part of the question first regarding the speed. I have myself done the Suez Canal pilotage course for about a week. I was involved in some investigations some few years back, and of course, when I went there, actually the maximum speed allowed as per the Suez Canal rules is 8 knots for every ship. They have to do this because they have to maintain a certain distance between the vessels, and the pilots also need to report to various stations as they are passing by from one station to the other. So they have their reporting points at each location. That is one. Now, the reason why I wrote my question, and of course I know the ISM Code is of course advocating that everybody has their own responsibility, but yet we see that. And that was precisely my reason of writing that despite that thing in place, we still need to work on those lines where IMO needs to take some urgent steps and drastic steps to put the responsibility on the people ashore. And moreover, the people who are not sailed on a ship or who have not been, they don't know the other side of the practical aspect of the sailing. That's all about it.
Thank you very much, Vikram, for your elaborate question. You've taken time to give us a nice question. I think we had a contribution from everyone, including an interesting adjoining question by Jeffrey. Thank you, Jeffrey, for contributing. We'll move to the next question. We'll skip this one because we go to Nikhil straight away because he's online, and Sagar is not online, and we'll have to start prioritizing because we're coming up very close to 1 hour of the conference, and we want to be winding up in another half an hour. So Nikhil, your question, very interesting. 2 pilots, what were they doing? Do you want to add some meat to that bone?
Not really. I think it's pretty clear what I've asked. So would truly appreciate the practical aspect. I don't want to hear any legal jargon.
In other words, Ashwin, he doesn't want to hear from you. But listen, practical aspects, my input, very simple. 2 pilots on board advising the master. Master takes the advice or doesn't take the advice. He has only 2 options, right? But I see Ashwin smirking. I'm sure he'll give some legal jargon nevertheless. Captain's responsibility is to ensure safe passage. But listen, if this had a bank effect, if we are assuming it had, and she was being sucked to the port, to counter that, giving a starboard helm, if the wind catches the bow while the helm is given too much or too little, trust me, the reaction time is literally seconds, not even half a minute before she starts going the other way. Farhad Nanavati puts his hand up. Before I pass it on to Captain Panda, Farhad, do you want to add something to this intelligent engineer's question, please?
An extremely intelligent engineer's question, though.
Yes.
From a damn good engineer, that too.
Yes.
But having said that, there was an incident a couple of years, many years back, actually in 2006, where I had gone to investigate, and well, the pilots over there, I mean, the master, yes, he's responsible for the vessel. However, he decided to oblige the pilots with Coca-Cola. So he went down to get the Coca-Cola. The third officer was on the bridge, brand new third officer. This was a VLCC. Obviously, a discharge part cargo and going through with about 15.7 meters draft. And the pilots, one was taking insulin, and the other one was, on the third officer's case for what is there for lunch, dinner, etc., 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 and etc. And obviously, it is simple. Nobody was paying attention to safe navigation, because it is assumed that the vessel will keep going in the center of the canal, And right enough, the vessel grounded, breached 2 tanks, and it was huge flame. The vessel behind that was a single hull at that time, and gave full astern engines without, with the worry of coming too close to the vessel. Lost control, and the hull was breached, spilled oil all over the canal. So a short gist of what the pilots were doing, but yet, I don't know if anybody has been for a Suez Canal course. They do these courses, and we after that have been doing these courses for all our colleagues. And the pilots are generally very, very hospitable, and they also expect the same, being reciprocated. So let's not get them wrong at the same time. Yes, these things do happen where, the situational awareness is totally lost. And it's as simple as that.
All right. Thank you very much for that input. Captain Panda, do you want to add a little to Nikhil's anxiety about
having two pilots? Yeah, you see, every canal or pilotage passage, they have their own set of regulations and all. Like you may recall in Kiel Canal, they used to bring their own helmsmen, and that trend continues. And similarly, in Panama Canal, they follow a different set of procedures altogether. Whatever it may be, those canal authorities, they don't hide such requirement. They are well published. So any vessel whaling or transiting through those canals, they do agree in advance. So therefore, having 1 pilot and 2 pilots, they are already there in their processes, and we need not comment on that at this stage now.
Yeah, well, during my P&O days, Nikhil, let me tell you that we used to have a rule on the bridge. Those who are not required on the bridge are to be leaving the bridge. I don't know if 2 pilots, one might not be what one can do, the second one can do it. and also the master. So I think we've had enough examples of warships with at least 20 people on the bridge still running and hitting some things. But Ashwin, legal jargon, I know Nikhil doesn't really appreciate it, but
no, but Zarir, the question is not answered at all. I mean, please read the question and answer the question.
Okay. Okay. So, Captain Panda, our esteemed engineer, is not happy with the answer. It is the master's responsibility, Nikhil. We said that. Who made this rule? The international community did. It is in every IMO signatory country's interest to follow the rule of the master being ultimately responsible. And pilots are master mariners. It is a known fact. No pilots are allowed to advise without having a competency certificate in most places of the world. Ashwin, do you want to add a little bit? He's not yet finished answering.
I don't have much intelligence to add, but I think it's a very important question. I mean, there's always this conflict which has now come to light in this case as to who recommends and who is bound and who is responsible in this debate between a pilot and a master, not just in a canal, but also within ports. And it's a very important issue. And I don't think that we'll ever get clarity because pilots are invariably appointed by authorities who have superior bargaining position under whose terms and conditions they will say that they are not liable. The truth is that they know the sea conditions better than a visiting occasional master over there. So this conundrum is a very important question that Mr. Idani has asked. I don't have a straight, sensible answer to add to more than what he's asked.
Nikhil, are you happy with the answer? Or still not? Captain Panda, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, very, very rightly put by Ashwin. This issue of responsibility, liability, etc., between within the harbor or within those restricted waters, be it anywhere. The pilot is more aware of the situation. The pilot is a local person using the local languages, using the local facilities as such. May I say one incident where I was the lead investigator. The incident happened inside the port where logically and practically the master had no control. And the ship met a collision with substantial damage to the vessel as well as to the pier. We, the investigating team, apportioned the fault on the port authorities more than the ship. I'm not aware of the commercial settlement, but I'm aware that the pilot and the harbor master were suspended. That's all I can give an example in which I was the lead investigator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nikhil, are you happy with the answer now?
Yes, thank you. But it's just that, I think the gist is still lost. I was just coming from, I really appreciate Ashwin's approach. Thank you, Ashwin. Please, I meant no disrespect when I said I don't want the legal angle simply because we've already heard it, not because it's not important. But it's still not answered, Zarir. I am a ship's engineer. I follow common sense. You are taking a ship in a restricted waters. Obviously, a master maybe he's traversed the canal before, maybe not. But it's not illegal if he hasn't done it. Notwithstanding that fact, these two, let's call them gentlemen for the time being, pilots are experts in their area. This is their backyard. So logic prevails that they should take command of the vessel until you say bye-bye and they jump off the pilot into the pilot boat. I mean, I'm just trying to take the common sense angle.
Okay, Nikhil, I'll give you a more common sense answer to your common sense question. All right, you drive a very, very upmarket Volkswagen, I know. let me tell you this. If I give you a truck and ask you to go park it in your basement parking on the Palm, will you be comfortable? If I give you my Harley Davidson and ask you to go park it there and come out with as much ease and comfort and familiarization as you park your own car, would you be comfortable? Now here's me wearing a pilot's hat and telling you that, hey, your ship is your command. Your ship is more familiar to you. One day I'm on a motorcycle, one day I'm on an old rickety container ship, the other day I'm on a VLCC or a bulk carrier. They all maneuver differently. So here's a pilot's argument. Yes, I know my waters. Yes, I know where the shallow patches are and what the currents are doing, but I'm on your ship. So the pilot's argument would be that the master is more familiar with maneuvering his own craft rather than a pilot, however much he's experienced. You've got years of experience driving on these roads and probably parking in your basement parking. But hey, if you get somebody else's car to drive in, a little bigger, different to maneuver, or a sports car for that matter, you would be hesitant or you would be not as confident. And if you bang up that, you say, hey, this is a different car. I'm not used to this. Every day I get a different car to park. And this is where it comes down to it becoming very, very important to understand that the master is and will always be responsible, yes. But when there are aspects of blaming people and 100% blame and nobody else apportions it, is where the concerns come in. Does that make sense, Nikhil?
Very good, Zarir. Thank you. You brought in an angle which I wasn't looking at. So truly appreciate your statement. But may I also add, a chain is only as strong as the weakest link, and as important as the captain is the chief engineer.
No doubt about it. Chief engineers have always, ever since the last 100 years where motors were invented on ships after sailboats finished off, they've always been important. And very soon with autonomous ships and hydrogen cells, they are on their way out, looks like. But while they're here, we love them, don't we? Sorry, Nikhil, I had to take this dig. You brought it up, mate. All right, moving on. Let's carry on. Jagmeet has an interesting one to add. Jagmeet is online, but he is a noisy environment, he says. And he would like an answer to saying that, first of all, he writes a comment to me saying, ship owner is not Santa Claus. Yes, thank you very much. But that you should ask for those who are asking for 300 million out of the 961 as bonuses to tug owners, 300 million as defamation towards loss of reputation. And that's where it adds up to 900. But then those are the ones who are thinking ship owners is Santa Claus. But coming to the question, scapegoating and media does play an important role. But unfortunately, media does have an interest in sensationalizing a story, and I don't think that's going to end very soon. They've done it for various aspects, much more gorier things like war and explosions and earthquakes, etc., and they thrive over this. So I don't think the shipping would be spared, or the master or any of these incidents would be spared. So irresponsible comments and everything else that goes with it will unfortunately have to be dealt with in the world of social media, where everybody has got a voice. So do we. And our webinar is live on those channels of social media to make this voice go as far as possible. And that is the reason why we put it down.
If it's okay, I just have a quick question. Is that, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this at this time and this place, but is DG Shipping involved in this in any way? Since, it is involved.
It's the next question coming up. It's asked by me, and it's asked to Captain Panda, and that's exactly what it is. Captain Panda, could you please answer my question, please? I'm not going to repeat it.
Yeah, your question is, see, if we assume that it is a marine casualty, that's how it is. So in accordance, other than as Ashwin rightly pointed out, there are certain laws are made by the coastal state or the port state, or here it will be Suez Canal Authority. I'm not focusing my answer on one incident. I'm speaking in general. Whenever there is a marine casualty, every flag state or the coastal state or the port state is required to carry out a marine casualty investigation. And in that marine casualty investigation, in accordance with the casualty code made by the IMO, the substantially interested state can participate. Here, the substantially interested state in this particular incident will be India, because the seafarers were Indian. Now, coming to the casualty part, coming to the officers and their competencies, etc., their action will be examined by the country which has granted them certificate of competency. And here, since the vessel was under mandatory pilotage, obviously the action of the pilot will be examined, or the master's action will be very, very limited. There has been so the steps that will be initiated in this case is that the flag state, the substantially interested state here is DG Shipping, has already made a request to the Suez Canal authorities to participate in investigation. I'm not very sure whether the same has been accepted or not. That's all I can say on this case at this stage.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Farhad, is that the question you had, or is there another version you have in mind? You can shoot off if it's similar context.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And almost in similar context, and understood that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Captain Panda, for answering that. Next question is from Uday Murthy to Ashwin. Uday, you're online. Uday, I must say, I'll add a little line, has been a very successful branch chairman in the past for the IIMS UAE branch and remains an active supporter of the IIMS branch as one of the committee members. Uday, would you like to rattle out your question, sir?
Hello, everybody. Great discussion. 1 hour.
Louder, Uday.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, now good.
Okay, interesting discussion. 1 hour is too less to discuss this point. And nevertheless, my point is very clear. It's on the screen. I wouldn't take more time by repeating it. Okay, over to Ashwin.
Ashwin.
Right. Thanks. So I just stripped the question out of the subjectivity out of the question. It's whether they are right in detaining the crew and the ship. Okay, let's keep victim card and sadly out of it to give a more balanced answer. Okay, and because I'm taking the other side's perspective, I'll try and tell you. When a vessel comes to a port in India and causes damage to the port, it is common for the vessel to be withheld without going to process of law for the port to say, I'm not going to give you outward port clearance until you clear my claims for damage done to my jetty or to any other cargo discharge equipment, for example. So what they are doing is not something different from what we would normally do. Okay, one. Number two is the ship is being detained. The crew may not be being detained by the authority itself, but for the crew to be able to leave that place, they will need an outward immigration permission, and then outward immigration can be detained. So let's say there is a criminal who has committed an offense in India, or at least alleged to have committed an offense. Certainly we can prevent him from outward clearance from leaving out of India. And that is similar to what Egypt is doing to our crew. Now, this is all unfortunate and it's probably wrong, but this is the logic behind why I think what has happened over here and why they're holding back. Now on do's and don'ts, I mean, in an ideal world, yes, we must have do's and don'ts, but I think this was something which nobody foresaw, and the size of the incident is also something nobody foresaw. And because the facts are so complicated and difficult to predict, I don't fault any port or canal authorities for not having a systematic do's and don'ts system in place so one can predict how it should happen. Now, for share of due diligence, again, the same question of whether the pilots were gave an erroneous set of recommendation. Did the master not follow the instructions, or was it a third influencing factor such as weather? I think surveyors will need to analyze this better, come to a conclusion and make a recommendation that this appears to be of the most likely one cause of, or maybe two causes, or maybe multiple, all three causes may have occurred, resulting in the unfortunate incident. So one system which perhaps the IMO can do is to set up amongst its member countries a standard set of protocol under which these situations will be dealt with. So for example, if there is a collision or damage or pollution in your waters, you will, the country, the port state control will immediately back off and leave this alone to be trusted into the hands of the IMO. The IMO will follow a safe, continuous standard, and it is possibly a matter of time. And incidents like this will be, repeated incidents like this will result in a wake-up call. That's just how civilization progresses generally. And at some day, hopefully, we will see a system by which we can have a trusted, I'm not saying necessarily the IMO, but a trusted, neutral international body which will be taking care of this fact-finding, fault-finding, criminal punishment, and all of these, like a tribunal that is formed for this purpose.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. Uday, does that answer your question, sir? Thank you very much. I can see Sir Merno Shroff's hand going up, and I can, from the frown on his forehead, I can make out his mood. So, Sir Merno Shroff, please keep it as toned down as you can, being as outspoken as a reputation that you hold, and keep it short. We are running into 1 hour plus, but please go ahead. You have a point to make or a question, sir? If you don't unmute, we are not experts in lip reading, sir.
No. Captain Zarir, I have sailed up and down the bloody Suez Canal all my life when I started off for around 11 years.
Thank you.
And
So
I
what's your
realized,
question,
I realized that on the ship, the Egyptian pilots take over and all these Egyptian guys swarm our vessels. There's not even 1 square foot left. So the reality is the ship is under siege by Egyptians and the Egyptian pilots. But what is perplexing me right now is, Zarir, we have got autopilots and auto echo sounders, etc., as to why they have not modernized and why do we need 2 Egyptian pilots to board and stock up on all their whiskey and cigarettes rather than focus on the job. I never found any of these Egyptian pilot chaps serious or focused. They were, after our always after whiskey and cigarettes or money.
I get the point. Manoj, this is not about pointing fingers. We said that right at the beginning. Let me tell you that they are smart pilots. They are well trained. We have experienced a very, very much of a professional side to them. Like in every race, caste, creed, nationality, there are 2 sides of the coin. Like we have here, Ashwin playing the devil's advocate. We do have that aspect everywhere. But the point of the discussion, I'm sorry to say, is not about blaming anybody or any nationality or any kind of profession or swamping or anything. We are not going to focus on that aspect. But thank you very much for your input. I want to go very quickly to Suresh Amirapu, who is online, 13 number question, and he is online. Suresh, do you want to ask your question while you're online or make some context of it? I have an answer very ready for you.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I think the question says it all. I know you guys are running short of time, so I don't want to unless the question needs to be elaborated. Otherwise, please go ahead. If you have an answer ready, I'll be happy to hear it.
Yeah, I'll take that in very brief. Let me tell you that the limit set by the Suez Canal is 400 meters. This vessel was half a foot short of that, so she was within the limited size. So there must be some sensibility in them putting a 400 meter length, half a meter short. They must have put some sense in that figure of 400 meters because they obviously know their waters, and they have set the rules of 400 meters being the right size of vessel that can safely transit, and she was well within that length criteria, but just about, which also gives us reasons to believe whether that was a reasonably right assumption or not. But that being the set criteria, she was following that size criteria. Training of Swiss pilots is quite intense. We heard an earlier contributor, Farad, telling us that he has himself gone through the simulation training and the speed criteria, etc. So I would say that they are very well trained and very well tested as well. And the proof in the pudding is that given the number of ships that are transiting the canal, the number of such large incidents have been hardly any to talk about. There have been incidents in the last few years, 75 of them in a certain period of time that somebody I read somewhere had mentioned. Whether true or not, we don't know, but it's not an alarming figure. So obviously, most of the transits are safe and are within safe limits. Does that answer your question, Suresh?
It does partly. Thank you. There's another part of the question which I'd like you to throw some light on, which is on the availability and readiness of salvage equipment. Given the kind of revenues that the Suez Canal is getting, I think it's only fair that they must have a certain amount of salvage equipment ready. And by now they've also got a feel of what is it that they need.
Yes, they do have a reasonable amount of resource available. But obviously, in this case, that resource was not enough for an immediate response or relief within a day or two. So that's why it took 6 days and it took a spring tide to help them through. But salvage equipment is available, sir. It all depends on the gravity of the situation. More important than equipment, I would suggest, is the capability, because they did require specialist salvers to come in and assist them. So equipment is one thing, but it's not just about pulling it out by its ears. There is a technique involved, and that's where the experts and the globally renowned salvers who were involved did play their role. And they brought in their own powerful tugs, etc., and the expertise. So there's a lot of thought that needs to be put in such cases. Right, sir?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for asking this lovely question and coming online and contributing. Let's see who the next person who is live. Uday is asking another question. Uday, would you want to jump in to Captain Panda about Master's Overriding Authority?
The question is self-explanatory. I don't want to waste more time.
Captain Panda, do you want to take a short answer on this? What Uday is asking about Master's Overriding Authority and government-controlled transits. When he says government-controlled transit, I think he implies that mandatory pilotage had a role to play in this, because if you put mandatory pilots on the vessel, then there is a certain amount of responsibility which is implied. But Captain Panda, do you have an answer? Sir?
Yeah, I think this answer we have already explained before, as Ashwin very correctly said, that any vessel transiting through Suez Canal has to follow the Suez Canal Authority's laws, and the responsibility of the pilot or the assistance of the shore authorities is well documented in Suez Canal Authority's regulations. Similarly, every port and every other inland passages have their own rules and regulations, and where they very clearly spell out the responsibility of the assistance or responsibility of the assistance to be given by the shore authorities. Let me say very clearly, I'm yet to see where any shore authority or canal authorities have taken the responsibility of the ship's safety entirely on themselves till date. Therefore, I conclude that the responsibility remains with the master. Since the responsibility remains with the master has the overriding authority. Now, how much he can execute, that's a matter of anybody's judgment. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
That's the reality as on today.
Unfortunately, that's what the master signs up for, to take command and responsibility of a vessel worth millions of dollars and the lives on board. And that's why he's paid what he's paid these days. Uday, does that answer your question, sir? Okay, Mr. Shenoy asks Ashwin this very interesting question about
Yeah, so just before
world
I
recognition. Ashwin, do you want to take it up?
just before Divakar's question, from what Zarir last said, is that's why masters are paid so much. That's one of the arguments that is sometimes used to justify the criminalization of the master. Is if you are paid so highly, for which nobody complains when they are being paid, if you're getting so much of discretion, so much of benefit of doubt, everything is, oh, master took this call, must there not be associated along with that? Along with great power comes great responsibility, to quote from Spider-Man. And must there therefore not be that risk of somebody answerable for this? That's just to take off from what Zarir last said. That's one argument. The counter to this, it is a job of skill. Just because somebody is getting paid highly does not mean that he must be responsible for somebody else's fault or something. That's the counter to it. Coming to Divakar's specific questions, yes, there are. I mean, of course, there's the ITF, there's the IMO, there's something called JASON, JASON, which is a collective trade body. They are, in fact, doing a lot towards this, and this is something which is seriously work in progress, and especially after this recent incident. So I think there certainly will be a joint. I'm expecting something to come up in the near future. A joint association, not just on this, but also on abandoned vessels, unpaid crews, death compensation, plus, of course, more importantly, for a current purpose, criminalization and detention of seafarers. I think there certainly is progress being made towards this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Mr. Shenoy?
Yes, Captain.
Yes, thank you very much. Moving on, we're running out of time, but we'll take Theopolis' question if he's online for Ashwin.
So this first thing, judicial system use the social media with a lot of suspicion. What comes in social media and comes in newspaper is, I think they've learned enough from all countries not to be influenced by that, because it's essentially written always by written or published by somebody with an underlying interest in it. It's intended to influence the reader's mind. So that doesn't make much of a difference. But where there is an influence, I think, upon the decision making is just the pressure to try to appear to have done the right thing. So when you have, let's say, you're a local judge sitting out of Egypt, and you've got let's say, an Indian crew, and it's caused deaths, for example, of crew in Egypt. You're just not so much because of social media, but you're just under some sort of an pressure that you must convict, because if you let them go, it looks like a failure of the Egyptian judicial system. People like to see blood, people like to see conviction. So that pressure is there playing, I think, more upon the decision-making process in the judiciary, and it unconsciously does prejudice whichever side of the fence the seafarers may be at.
Well, I'd like to add a little bit here. 100 million is what the vessel is worth. And as per the 1952 Arrest Convention, for which Egypt is a party to, and under Egyptian Maritime Convention Law number 8, 1990, Article 60, it says that they will have the right to arrest the vessel if it is under salvage and rescue work consideration, and a very vague and broad damage caused by the ship due to collision, pollution, and maritime incidents is mentioned under letter B. Now, if the vessel is worth 100 million and the cargo is worth equally as much, then where are they going to get 900 million from if they let the crew go, is my question. The hull and machinery underwriters turn around and say, constructive total loss, you can keep the ship, mate. I'm not interested in paying you 900 million. I'd rather pay the ship owner 100 million as the value of the hull and machinery. What are your thoughts on this, with a follow-up on this question? Ashwin.
So, no, I don't think they can get anything more if it's a one-ship owning company. And unless there is so then his really ability to recover is restricted to the value of the ship, subject to the priorities. Okay, so if it's a maritime lien, mortgage, all of them in a particular order of things. Unless there is separately also a certificate that has been given by the underwriter, PNI, as part of his cover to protect the port, which is what often is the way to get over this. Ports have to get over the ability to recover
Intelligence.
restricted to the value of the ship. So with that certificate in place given by the PNI Club, the port's ability to recover is quite often on actual. So the canals authorities are normally on actual loss suffered, not limited by the value of the sale proceeds of the remains of that ship.
Thank you very much. Theopolis, are you happy with this, sir? I know you're online. If you are, give us a thumbs up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Nikhil Idnani, next question number 18 from you, sir, or 19 rather. I know you're online and you love to be completely satisfied with your answer. You almost sound like my wife sometimes when you say that. With all due respect, I know she's listening. I'm going to get nailed. But two experienced pilots to all panelists. Master responsible, yes. Why? Because it's his ship. That's his responsibility when he signs on the indentures. He is signing up for that responsibility, not knowing that one day it's going to be, I think you meant to say law of the land, not lay of the land, but we get your point. We can read your mind when you wrote that. Our pilot and masters or master mariners or some other qualifications, we already answered that. What responsibility does the boss of SCA have? Captain Panda, I think that's a very interesting subject. I think you have a voice on that about the local authorities and where do they stand, sir? Can you add a little?
Now, as on today, as we explained, the local authorities provide pilots or tugs or etc. for assistance. Again, I repeat, for assistance. And the responsibility still lies on the master. Again and again, we are repeating the same subject. Now, the local authorities, every port trust, I know the major port trusts in India, they have their own regulation with respect to analyzing the performance of the pilots and other harbor masters and other shore authorities. Otherwise, they vary from port to port, they vary from authority to authority. It is entirely on the local bodies to make their own standard processes as they deem appropriate. There is no international regime on that issue as such.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Is there anybody else, Judy, who is online who's asked? We have reached the 1.5 hour mark, and I did mention plus or minus 10 minutes. I would like to give the last few minutes to Captain Panda and Ashwin to summarize this and give the concluding remarks in the next 6 minutes that we have left, going on the extreme limits of 1.5 hours plus 10 minutes. I'd like to finish promptly. So we'll give to balance the voice, we'll give Ashwin the first, we'll give the devil the first due on going, please. But I encourage your courage. Once again, it's really commendable that you stood for the other side, Ashwin. But what are your concluding comments with all that has been discussed?
Sometimes having these strict criminal implications does also effectively improve the standards of care that people take when they're doing their respective job, not just in masters, but also when it came to, let's say, doctors and so forth as well. I won't take any more time. I just want to thank IIMS as well as all the audience for the effort that has been put in over here. It's been most interesting. I've also learned a lot preparing for it, and I hope in some way I've been able to get you to think from the other side as well. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you, Ashwin. Captain Panda, your concluding comments, sir.
Thanks, Zarir, and thanks, IIMS, for giving me this opportunity and an interesting discussion, if I may say. I just want to, one of the questions that we missed, somebody has raised that cases like Erica, Prestige, Heavy Spirit, MS Chitra, etc., where the DGS was prompt in revoking the licenses, let me say. Now we have not. On the contrary, the DG Shipping has protected quite a few seafarers stating that since they are Indian nationals, we have the right to conduct the inquiry. That's why they are needed in India. So till we complete the inquiry, they cannot go abroad. Anyway, different countries adopt their own processes for the benefit of their citizen and benefit of the industry at large. Now, this issue of criminalization has to be addressed in its right sense, in sincerity. All interests will have to find out ways and means, because it is far from over, and the way the things are happening, the way it is creating a situation where the seafarers are getting trapped in between the maritime laws and the local laws, whether it is to be called as incompetence, negligence, or it is to be called as criminal and be crucified as a criminal. Those are the issues which have to be deliberated. Thanks for creating the forum to discuss this issue. Let this be a good beginning for the results to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Ashwin and Captain Panda. One question: if somebody else calls in who wants to have a similar forum, would you all both agree to voice your opinions? If you all get interesting comments, let's put it, afterwards, which we will share the chat box with you afterwards. But would you agree to come in and voice, because it's not going to be easy. I mean, look, there's always going to be the other side, but would you be willing to stand up as a follow-up of this?
Well, let me explain my situation. I'm a retired person, but I'll be speaking not in my past capacity, but of course from the experience that I've gained in my past capacity. So my participation will be, I mean, I'll participate in any way I can for the improvement, but there will be all the advocates that I'll be giving will be in personal capacity only. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much. Now that you've mentioned your past experience, I'm asking you one more last concluding question, and that is, if the master of this vessel, which I don't want to name, is listening, or his family is, should he be worried about his COC and inquiries that will follow from MMD or not? With whatever is known, whatever we hear, rumors or not, on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried should he be?
Zarir, I'm not the chief examiner of master and mates anymore, but I think he has no reason to worry. He has got everything to clarify his position. The way I see it, I think he has done a good job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That, I'm sure, is very assuring, coming from somebody who has been an advisor to a large government body and representing seafarers, or have rather asked questions to seafarers all his life for passing the Viva. It has a lot of weight when you say that, sir. I really appreciate that, and I hope the message goes out to those worried seafarers or people on board in some form, way, shape, that they should not be worried. This is what somebody independently has to say, and you should have a clear mind in answering as many questions. Unless, yes, Captain Panda.
Based on the information that I have with me at present, maybe something more may come out from the investigation, which may change my decision. But as on today, whatever we have heard, I think he has done a reasonably good job.
Thank you, sir. Ashwin, do you want to counter that?
No, nothing to add. I think everybody knows time.
Be a devil's advocate here, mate. Should he be worried or not? If you were a lawyer representing the other side and have a billion dollar claim, what would you do, mate? Would you tell the master to be worried?
I think it was went up.
Come on, I'm putting you on the spot here. If you represented SCA, what would you say to the master? I'm not letting you go unless you pay me $1 billion.
It's very sad and unfortunate, but I think it just spreads a bad message if the SCA is doing this without sufficient grounds and basis. I mean, they need to really justify. They also, from their side, need to do some better media management. I mean, they've come out as the bad guys in this whole scene. with nobody knowing what is their reasoning and perspective behind it.
Good, good, good. No, thank you very much. I think we have rounded it up nicely, and we've concluded it with both sides of the coin, and that was what we wanted to discuss. We wanted to keep it as balanced and as open-minded as possible. Thank you for participating and giving us 1 hour and 41 minutes, as we said we would. And thank you, Captain Panda and Ashwin, for putting out your thoughts to the panelists. And we have 46 still listening. That is a great number. More than half have stood up for 1.5 hours that we have been talking. That means whatever we said has been interesting. Thank you very much, IIMS UAE branch and the committee, for enabling this voice for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Zarir. Thank you, Capt. Panda.
Sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
The link
Thank
is
you,
available
Ashwin.
on YouTube live. If those who have missed it or those of your colleagues who want to see, you can pass the link out and we will share the link. It's available on open media. You can see it on your own time. We have nothing to hide or say. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.